Hey guys, it's your girl, Crystal Nicole. So, Sean Kelly has been a major person used to prove that Tory was guilty of shooting Megan Thee Stallion. Although, the way people have been doing this is by just using the part of his story where he claimed Tory shot the gun 4 to 5 times into the air everywhere that night, while ignoring pretty much everything else he said that night pertaining to how we even got to a shooting in the first place. Definitely ignoring how we got to a shooting of Megan with his story. But to be fair, they can use Sean Kelly to say that Tory was guilty of negligence the same way the DA used Sean to press that charge when they weren't confident that they would get a guilty on the assault charge, confirming with their own charges that even they were aware that the assault of Megan by Tory may not have happened the way she claimed, or why bother pressing a negligence charge at all. So as we all know, prosecutors were aware that Megan had lied about her original story that she gave to Detective Stogner and the world after they pressed charges against Tory in October for assault, which is why she did a new interview in November to change that story so they could have something for the assault charge that they pressed. Kelsey was not cooperating as a witness, and they definitely couldn't use Sean Kelly to prove their case. So without Megan, prosecutors really had nothing to prove Tory assaulted her. So they added on negligence, which only makes Tory responsible of pulling out a gun and shooting, but not with the intent to harm anyone. They would have just said that it was unintentional due to him trying to stop the fight or something of that nature. So again, when I say they colluded to put this man away by any means necessary, that's exactly what I mean. Sean Kelly was the person who put a major dent in the prosecutor's case because his story in no way, shape, or form was the story that they had gotten from Megan. And they couldn't say he didn't witness this event, being one of the people who called police to report what he was seeing before the shots were fired. Because according to Sean, he was on the phone during all the fighting, and it was the 911 operator who told him that it was gunfire and not fireworks. So for all the slow bitches in the back, that 911 call also proves that Megan is a liar, as he was not reporting this girl walking away from the car when those shots rang out. She was getting beat on, according to his 911 call. Now, what y'all should really be asking is how come this 911 call wasn't released or played at trial by either side? Because I'm assuming if the 911 operator could hear gunshots, she might have also picked up all that cursing and fighting Sean Kelly said they were doing before the shots rang out. So where is it? Now, Sean Kelly changed his story so many times about all of this fighting he saw that it would make your head hurt reading through these transcripts trying to keep up with it all. And it is quite obvious that he was told to tell this story in a way that made Tory the aggressor in some type of way, as Sean keeps everything about the arguing escalating into a fight between Megan and Kelsey, and that Kelsey fired the first shots the same. But everything else about his story is all over the motherfucking place, okay? So let's start with the police report. The police reports Sean heard arguing, saw the car, saw the individuals, saw Kelsey get out to fight Megan, heard shots, saw Megan crawl into a driveway, and Tory and Quan apparently beating Megan before putting her in the car and fleeing. Notice how the police report leaves out the shooter, but only puts in information about all that fighting. Notice how Detective Stogner left out all of this information in his report and only put Megan and Tory were fighting. Notice how all original reports only reported shots fired into the air from an unknown shooter. Not a single report from the media ever mentioned anything Sean Kelly told police that night about the fight between the girls. Kelsey was even named an unknown woman, although she had been arrested that night as well. So why was she anonymous in a lot of these articles? Interesting. All these reports made that night reported by Seankelly, from the 911 call to his interviews with police, and yet the only thing we got was a Cliff Notes version about Tory being arrested for a gun and Megan going to the hospital from a cut from glass. Even after Megan came out and said she was shot, you still heard nothing about what Seankelly said reported. Why is that? Why is it we only heard about it when Tory and Sean Holly exposed it during that preliminary hearing? They did everything possible to keep Kelsey out of this from the very beginning. It was Kelsey who brought herself into it after Megan made that post about being shot but not naming the shooter, helping to lead the speculation that had already been started by Megan's producer, security, and TMZ that Tory must have done it since he was arrested for a gun that night. Now, the other interesting thing about that 911 call and even Seankelly's first interviews with police is that he was never asked who the shooter was. Not even by the 911 operator when it was happening. Apparently, she cared more about what was going on than who the actual perpetrator was. Hence, earlier articles just claiming it was an unknown shooter who had fired shots into the air, not at anyone. But the prosecutors tried to imply during cross-examination that Sean only came up with that story after speaking with defense investigators. They apparently forgot he had told Detective Stogner that it was a female shooter 4 days after the shooting, the same day Megan spoke with Detective Stogner, July 16th. Although, on the stand, he kept trying to say it was both until he was asked to refresh his memory on earlier statements made. So let's move on to his interview with the defense investigator Green on January 5th, 2021. This is where you can tell something had happened that made Sean nervous and no longer want to speak, but he did this interview anyway. Now, he told investigator Green that he heard arguing, saw Kelsey come out the back and start fighting Megan in the front seat. They came out the car and continued fighting. Quan gets out, comes around, and he separates the girls violently. Megan goes back to the car. Kelsey follows, and Megan starts kicking her away. The girl fired shots into the car. Tory hops out, starts arguing with Kelsey. There appeared to be a struggle over the gun. The girl crawls across the driver's seat and falls out the car and crawls to the driveway. He claims that all three started beating on her until Quan says the police are coming, and he gets Tory and Kelsey off of Megan and drags Megan to the car, throws her in, and they leave. Now, here is where we are going to stop, because this is when Sean's story starts not making any sense. When investigator Green gets him to go over this story again, now Tory has intervened in the fight with Megan and Kelsey and Quan. But then he says that, well, Tory only got out the car after the girl fired the first shots, and then he took a shot at Megan, which would be after the fighting. So he contradicted himself there. And in the police report, it says that it was only the guys in the driveway with Megan, not all three. So I don't, excuse me, you can see what's going on here. Now, every time he told this story, he would keep the part about Megan and Kelsey fighting the same and the girl firing the first shots the same. But he would then try to add Tory into the fight with the girls, while at the same time denying that he did this, and it was only Quan, by saying that Tory didn't get out the car until after the first shots were fired. So let me explain the differences between his stories, okay? So to Investigator Green, this is his first story to Investigator Green. He says the girl goes back into the passenger seat, and he asked him, well, where's the short guy? He said Tory was still in the back. He gets out, all four are fighting. She gets back in the car, all screaming and shouting, shooting, girl shooting. It appears to be the girl drop shooting into the car. The guy gets out from the back, starts arguing with Kelsey. See how he contradicts himself? So again, he was asked, where's Tory, on his second time telling the story. And he says, well, once he comes out, he participates in the fight. The girl shooting. He said, where was Tory? He said, well, she shot first, and then he came out, and then he shot the girl. I thought it was a firework. To me, it seemed they were holding fire. They appeared to be struggling over the gun. So then to Jody Little, the DA investigator, he said the driver walked around and got involved in the fight. Everybody was there. There were 3 people. The guy in the back got out and they were all taking turns beating on the girl in the passenger chair. Whew. Notice how he can't keep his story straight on when Tory got out the car and keeps trying to involve him in a fight with Megan and Kelsey and then contradicting those claims by saying Tory got out after the shooting. Notice how he doesn't mention anything about a struggle over the gun with the DA, but he did with the defense investigator and Detective Stogner in previous interviews. Notice how Tory is all of a sudden brightly dressed during the shooting, and we all know what he had on. The reason he can't keep any part of this story straight is because it didn't happen, and he's trying to make it happen with his testimony and failing miserably. Now, another prime example of this is his story also changes about when and how Tory fired those shots. So let's run through these stories again. On the 911 call, he does not say who is doing what because he was never asked. To Sergeant Diaz, he does not say who did what because, again, he was never asked. To Detective Stogner, he said Kelsey fired the shots during a fight with Megan and Tory tried to wrestle the gun away from the girl. To Investigator Green, it was the girl shooting appears to be the girl drop shooting into the car. The guy gets out from the back, starts arguing with Kelsey. Megan crawls out the driver's side, went to the driveway. The girl shooting, where was Tory? She shot first and then he came out and then he shot the girl. I thought it was a firework. To me, it seemed they were holding fire. They appeared to be struggling over the gun. It was dark. I wasn't looking for a gun. Police tell him that it was a gun. These people did not wake up to the sound of gunfire. The chap in the back was brightly dressed. To Jody Little, the female, he says, to Jody Little, the DA investigator, he says the female began shooting at the female, then Tory shooting at the female. One of the girls was shooting the girl in the car. It happened during all the scuffling. Then he saw the girl. And also, the chap in the back was brightly dressed, and he started shooting the gun. At trial, he said Tory got out the back after Kelsey started shooting and joined the fray. They were all fighting, and then he saw shots come from Tory everywhere into the air. He told the DA that Tory did not get out of the car shooting. He was like at the opposite end when the shot started going off. But apparently, when he did finally get a hold of that gun, his arms was outstretched, firing 4 to 5 shots everywhere into the air. He admitted he said there was a struggle over the gun, but he had to be asked many times because he outright refused to give a straight answer when asked. He would say things like, excuse me, they were all fighting. Well, he didn't say, hey, it's my turn. Can I have that gun? Oh, they were all struggling. Until he had to be refreshed on what he actually said. And then it would be, well, yes, I said there was a struggle with the girl for the gun. Now, it is very obvious that Seankelly was told to stretch the truth and word his story in a way to make Tory culpable in something other than trying to stop the girls from killing each other that night. So he tried to include him in the fight, but contradicted that story. Then he has Megan just being brutally assaulted in the driveway by all 3 people or just 2 people before being tossed in the car. On top of that, it was made clear that Tory and Quan were not joining in the fight. They were just trying to break it up. So that should be hint number 1, that he was made to tell his story this way and include Tory in that fight because he kept contradicting that story. Now, when you add in that, plus him only seemingly wanting to be in contact with the DA before trial and try to ignore the defense, who he was a witness for, should be very telling. Especially him trying to snitch on the defense to the DA and accuse them of pressuring him. Funny how this pressuring thing keeps being used by the DA against the defense. But I digress. Now, with that said, if people don't see what's going on here and what happened here, then they're just stuck on stupid, because even a blind man could see the scam here. It's even funny to me to see people who don't believe Tory did this still coming up with theories on if he may have just grabbed a gun and tried to stop them and accidentally shot Megan doing so, even though his DNA was not found on that gun. There is no way Tory jumped out the car, grabbed the gun, and also let off shots at Megan. Whoever was shooting that gun first was always shooting it, and that person was Kelsey. I don't know why this is so hard to accept after all the lies from Megan and Kelsey alone. The only thing Tory did was intervene after the shots were fired, according to Seankelly. He never hopped out the back seat and shot Megan from over top of the door as she was walking away to the front or the back like she claimed. It was all a lie. And the sooner the nayers accept that, the quicker they will see us shut the fuck up about it. But until then. Now, what I really want to know is why Seankelly told Detective Green that police had found that gun there at the scene where he was, and why they were dragging people out of their homes at gunpoint after they found it. Apparently, this was shocking to Investigator Green when he heard it, and it was shocking to me too. So inquiring minds want to know, did y'all find that gun near Sean's house or in the car when you pulled them over? Given all the shady business we've seen taking place during this case, I'm going to need someone to answer this one. Because if this happened, is this why we haven't heard from a single neighbor about this case outside of Sean? Like Miguel from across the street? Or the other lady who called 911? Where are they? Maybe we should find them and ask them if this really happened or not. The one thing Seankelly never changed is seeing those girls fight and seeing Kelsey flash first. Everything else he said was intentionally contradicting to make him seem like he wasn't credible. And it worked. Because the first thing people talked about was how contradictory he was and how the defense shouldn't have used him as a witness because he placed Tory as the shooter, while consistently ignoring the one consistent part of his story about Megan and Kelsey that never changed. There was not two shooters of Megan. There was only one. And if you want to say, well, Tory was shooting after Kelsey, I'll have to tell you to prove that with some evidence, because what reason would Tory have to shoot Megan after Kelsey did and he didn't even intervene in their fight? Y'all really believe he said, fuck it, my turn? Or does it make more sense for him to have hopped out the car to try and protect his girl like he told police that night? And what Seankelly also confirms during his multiple statements while still trying to make Tory guilty of something that he never saw happen. He just assumed that Tory took the gun and shot it. He never said Tory got out that car shooting at anyone. So that's where that ends. And last but not least, for someone who acted like he didn't want to be involved in this, he sure hunted down his neighbors to see if they had spoken with police about this and was wondering how come nobody had come to see him like they had done his neighbors. So much so that he thought that the police didn't even care about this situation. He had no problem speaking to police that night and 4 days later. But all of a sudden, when it came down to rehash his story 6 months later, now he's fidgety and he doesn't want to speak. And he has all these exaggerated stories to tell, to the point that George even had to call him out as being an uncooperative witness on the stand because of the way he was answering questions and saying he didn't really want to be there. So again, obvious that something happened from July to January that I guess we will never know about. I wonder if he, Miguel, and Mary still stay at their addresses or have they relocated. Just curious. Anyway, with that being said, that concludes this video. Leave your thoughts below, and I will see you all later. Goodbye.